Hello. Hi, this is David Erler from Heart of the Lion School of Martial Arts. Um, what has occurred to me lately is that uh, a lot of the students in the different schools for martial arts are not being taught stances or are being let go with very sloppy stances. Um, a good teacher at the beginning of your martial arts, no matter what age you are, when it comes to stances, for what comes very important is forms, fighting, and drills. And the drills could be anything from short sparrings to one-step sparrings, two-step sparrings, three-step sparrings, all the way up to five-step sparrings. And the way a student stands should be taught from the very beginning. And then as your lessons progress and your belts and ranks and everything else progress, the importance of the stances should get more and more exacting. At first, you just want them to do, get them as close as possible to the stance that you want. Like Chumbi, everybody knows that. Well, not everybody, because the white belt's the first to walk in. You walk in, and your Chumbi stance should be hands in a proper position, feet directly underneath your shoulders, about shoulder width apart, and facing directly forward. And your Chumbi stance, or ready stance, as some instructors call it, should be done as close as possible when you're beginning. Now, as your students that you have coming in, please forgive me. I had a short night last night, and a very long night last night, and didn't get much sleep. Okay, so your stances, you want them to be as close as possible for your beginning students and the very young, because it depends on a lot of different factors, and one of the main factors is the ability to maintain concentration. And the younger the person is, the shorter that concentration span is. So you need to condense and make the classes as short little spurts of 20-30 minutes, and cram as much as you possibly can in that your student can absorb. So the stances are one of the very first things that you want to teach your students. And as they get further along in their training, you want to get this stances a lot more exacting. You want them to be better at green belt than they were at white belt. You want them to be much better at blue belt than they were at green belt, and so on. And you should be able to expect your black belts to know exactly what they need to be doing and in the correct stance for every movement that they're doing in their forms, and so on. So one of the concentrations things you need to do is, as a student, practice your stances. Practice, okay? An L stance should be an L stance, okay? Not a kind of L stance. It should be L stance, okay? And your front stance, boom, boom, okay? Front knee should be slightly bent, rear leg almost straight, okay? When you look down at your toes when you're in a front stance, you shouldn't see your big toe when you look down, or just barely be able to see your big toe over your knee, kind of like that. Okay, here's your knee. This would be your big toe, just barely. Okay, with me, I like it so it's like that. My front knee completely over. But that's just me. Back stance, or L stance, or fighting stance. Now the rear leg is the one that's bent, and your front knee is also bent, but you have most of your weight on your rear leg for rear stance or L stance. Like I said before, please forgive me. So the stances in your forms, whether they be crane stance, or some people call it 1 foot stance, and where your hands are, and where your feet position is, and so on and so forth, should be proper. And the reason is that when you're in each and every single your stance that you are taking, your center of gravity and your balance should be able to be maintained at all times. The worst part of any movement going from one stance to the next stance is the in-between transition, when you're going from just stepping forward, as you're taking this step to go forward into your next stance. This, as you're picking your foot up and you're starting to move, you're transferring weight from one foot to the other, and at that particular moment, okay, you can be knocked off balance, and being able to catch your balance to move on to that next step or next stance is very important. So your instructor should be watching how you're moving from stance to stance, from movement to movement, from one foot to the other, and he should be able to tell and pick where you need a little bit more practice in, where the possibility of being knocked off balance or you just falling over is minimized as much as possible. So please, as a good student, practice. And a lot of your stances are going to be found in your forms, or kata or youngs, depending on the words used to describe what you're going to be asked to do. So, as an instructor, help them along. Help your students to get better at doing their stances. And as a good student, practice. I mean, if you have to practice Form 1, not just 10 times, not just maybe 30 or 40 times, but maybe you have to do it 100, 200 times to get it down so it's perfect to not only you, but to your instructor. You've done. I mean, as a student, I may have performed Chunji Form 1 numerous times, so many times I couldn't even count them. I couldn't tell you how many times I've had to do Form 1 to impress my instructor, to show him I'm doing this particular form and each movement in the form correctly. So you do it. I mean, when I go through my forms, even if I know 15 to or more forms, I may start off at Form 1, and I'll do Form 1 until it feels good. Then I do Form 2 until it feels good. And I progress up through the forms, doing each stance as I have perceived it at its best, for me. Now, as your students have either age or, and I'm talking about us really old guys that are over 40 and 50 years old, our stances are going to be as good as it's going to get. And your balance as you get older gets worse. So as I turned 60 this year, so I know my balance is nowhere near as good as it was when I was in my 20s and 30s, and also being able to hold a stance or hold a position while doing a kick or holding a kick in a position, like going to crane stance, doing that side kick, and then be able to hold it there, hold your balance in this position, and then withdraw the kick to put it down. You'll find that your very young ones, who are just starting off in the positions, are doing the same thing that your really old ones are doing. They're not being able to hold that position, but if they can at least get it out there, that half a second, pull it in, put it down, that helps. That helps tremendously. So, doing side kicks and round kicks and all the different kicks, heel kicks, whatever, and holding the position that you're supposed to be in, either the before stance or the after stance. It's very important because you want to be able to go from one stance, do a technique, fall or put down into your next stance where it should be, like boom, it should be there, or maybe even you have to do multiple kicks, kick here, withdraw, kick there, withdraw, and being able to maintain that balance of your body being center line, where you're not falling over in the middle of the techniques. So, as a good student, practice. That's all I have to say about that for today. Practice your stances and do it to it. This is David Erler from Heart of the Lion School of Martial Arts. Just putting it out there. Practice your stances. Have a good day.